The hallways of history have been graced by many remarkable men and women, people who have dared to question the norm and become pace-setters and trend-makers. One such remarkable person is Queen Nefertiti of Egypt. More than just any queen, Nefertiti was a wife, mother, priestess, fashion icon, and some might say the most beautiful woman of her time. Just like her personality, Nefertiti led a very intriguing life. But for someone whose life attracted the eyes of many, so much of her life is still shrouded in mystery. Centuries later, historians and archaeologists are still trying to understand the mysterious life and death of Queen Nefertiti. And thanks to the traces left behind from her presence on this earth, many mind-blowing revelations have been exposed. This is the fate of Egypt's forgotten Queen Nefertiti. In every history book, as well as all the surviving chronicles from ancient Egypt, very little is mentioned about Queen Nefertiti, which is a bit odd given how seriously the ancient Egyptians took their records. Until her marriage to Pharaoh Akhenaten, almost nothing was known about Nefertiti, but even though there is no concrete evidence about her upbringing or childhood, there are a couple of theories. One of the most common ones is that she was the daughter of Ai, a well-known nobleman in ancient Egypt's 18th dynasty, the same era when Nefertiti appeared on the scene. Ai served as a close advisor to 3 pharaohs of that dynasty, including Akhenaten, Nefertiti's husband. Furthermore, one of his many titles was God's father, and some Egyptologists believe that this title was used for a man whose daughter married the pharaoh. Based on this, it was inferred that Ai was the father of this powerful queen. However, no source explicitly supports this theory. According to another theory, it is assumed that Nefertiti may have been Akhenaten's sister or cousin. This is also plausible as it wasn't uncommon for royal family members, specifically the Egyptian royals, to marry members of their nuclear or extended families. Another theory explains that Nefertiti may have been a foreign princess from the kingdom of Mitanni. After all, the name Nefertiti translates to "the beautiful woman has come," which according to some historians suggests that the queen has a foreign origin. There are many more theories, but none of them hold water since all are yet to be proven historically. Even the exact date of her marriage to Pharaoh Akhenaten is unknown. To tell you of how much Queen Nefertiti's life is shrouded in mystery, what we do know for a fact is that she bore at least 6 daughters to her husband, the king. She had a sister, Mutbenret, who is Pharaoh Tutankhamun's stepmother, and she was one of the most relevant queen consorts in the history of ancient Egypt. Now, what about Nefertiti's life made her so relevant? Many queens throughout history are known only for their position as wives of the king. But Nefertiti was quite different. Despite the fact that her husband, Akhenaten, was a powerful king, she was able to shine outside of his shadow, and this earned her many, many titles. She was known as the Lady of All Women, the Lady of Grace, the Lady of Two Lands, the Mistress of Upper and Lower Egypt, and so much more. Regarding her relationship with her husband, there is reason to believe that Nefertiti and Akhenaten were genuinely in love, a quality not seen among many royal couples. It is believed the two were married at a young age and they ascended to the throne of Egypt a few years later. As many kings and queens did in those days, the couple ordered the construction of several memorial structures, some of which remain in Karnak to this day. These structures bear hieroglyphs and pictorial illustrations, which speak volumes concerning their marriage. One depiction of the two shows the couple in their royal court, along with their daughters observing a festival thrown in their honor. Another depiction from that era shows that the two were always together and virtually inseparable, with hints of romanticism. Despite the fact that Akhenaten had other wives, Nefertiti was clearly his favorite, and this earned her the title Main King's Wife, his beloved. The strength of the relationship between Nefertiti and Akhenaten was possibly the reason for Nefertiti's heavy involvement in all aspects of the royal court. She wasn't just the wife of a great pharaoh, she was also a queen who held great power. Many paintings from her time as queen depict her wearing a crown, which has led historians to believe that she may have been seen as an equal to her husband, and even ruled after her husband's demise. One of the greatest achievements of their reign was the promotion of monotheism in ancient Egypt. That is, the worship of just one god, Aten, the sun god. Akhenaten and Nefertiti became high priests of Aten, and this is interesting because pharaohs were the only ones previously known to hold the position of priest or mouthpiece of a god. By the 5th year of their reign, the cult of Aten had become even more widespread, and the capital of Egypt was moved to Akhenaten, where the head temple was constructed. Also around this period, Nefertiti's name was changed to Neferuaten Nefertiti, another indication of her piety to Aten and her position as a high priestess. Her husband, who was previously known as Amenhotep IV, also changed his name to Akhenaten to signify the religious transformation that was happening at the time. Religion wasn't the only part of government that Nefertiti dabbled into. She also passed judgment and reprimanded wrongdoers. One of the many paintings in the tombs and temples of ancient Egypt shows the queen striking down a prisoner with a special kind of weapon. And it wasn't common for queens to wield weapons. This was even more proof of the unusual power that Nefertiti had in her day. Nefertiti's and Akhenaten's reign was indeed highlighted by the couple's boisterous show of power. Old gods were gotten rid of, temples destroyed, priests were forced to convert, and the locals who had trouble embracing a newly made-up religion could no longer express themselves, not to talk of the construction of new temples and a new capital, which cost so much money. While all these changes made the couple popular among historians, Egyptians of that era despised them, understandably. The changes were too dramatic, and even though it was hard to keep up, they had to feign support. After all, defying the king's order was the quickest way to lose one's head. The reconstruction of Egypt, led by Akhenaten and Nefertiti, led the once prosperous country to sink deeper into debt and poverty. And the whole country loathed its king for it. But to their greatest relief, after reigning for 17 years, Akhenaten died. And although Nefertiti outlived her husband, her role in the country before his death is not clear. After Akhenaten's death, virtually all of his life's work was destroyed. The temples of Aten, his memorial temples, the practice of monotheism, and so on. But the real question is, what happened to Nefertiti during this time? Did she hold on to power after her husband died? Did she fade away? Or was she suppressed by her husband's successors who hated him? Some 21st century scholars and historians postulate that Akhenaten granted his wife some level of immunity to the hatred that surrounded them. According to their findings, Akhenaten elevated his beloved wife to the position of co-king and gave her a new name, Ankheperure Nefertiti. This development happened 5 years before he died, and although he wasn't preparing for his death at the time, this act ensured that Nefertiti still had power even after Akhenaten's death. Therefore, when her husband died, Nefertiti ascended the throne as pharaoh. Her role as pharaoh was to prepare the country for the reign of her stepson, Tutankhaten, who later changed his name to Tutankhamen. Karakuni, an Egyptologist, explains that Nefertiti's role as pharaoh marked the onset of the economic restoration of the country. However, she did not receive any credit for her role. Eventually, her time as pharaoh passed, and Tutankhamen became the new king. The fate of Nefertiti afterward is another debate between historians. Some believe that she became an influence on younger kings, Tutankhamen specifically, while others believe that she may have been killed by Tutankhamen when he started purging the country of his father's religious influences. Regardless, no one knows for sure what made Nefertiti step down as pharaoh, how she died, or where she was buried. Regardless of this mystery, Nefertiti remains relevant because of the timeless legacy she left behind. It is common knowledge that the legacy of the past royalties of the ancient Egyptian kingdom is carried on by virtually every art form that existed in their respective eras. Nefertiti is no different. In fact, the artistic depictions of Nefertiti are more numerous than those of many past Egyptian kings, her husband included. This explains why a woman with a mysterious origin and end continues to be historically relevant thousands of years after her death. Several artworks from 1349 BC to 1336 BC, also called the Amarna Period, have been revealed over the years, and they all explain the relevance of Nefertiti during her husband's reign. Not only that, the artists in that period modified the standards for their creation of these artworks when it came to creating one pertaining to Nefertiti. For example, sculptures were typically created using rigid rules, and sculptors only created ordinary two-dimensional figures of people. However, Nefertiti's sculptures were modified by the addition of new techniques, such as fluid, curved, and more natural lines. This style may have been invented to properly capture the queen's beauty and highlight her most flattering features: lips, long face and nose, belly pouch, and wide hips. Most of these features can be seen on a headless red quartzite sculpture displayed in the Louvre Museum in Paris. Historians and archaeologists have raved about the beauty of this figurine and the rich culture behind its peculiarities. However, its identity had not been deciphered because it is headless. Nevertheless, it is obvious that the figurine represents a young woman wearing a fitted linen garment, which highlights her feminine features. It is certain that this masterpiece dates back to the Amarna period. and this has led to speculations that it depicts Nefertiti or perhaps one of her daughters. Art depicting Nefertiti is more common in the surviving temples and tombs from her tenure as queen, but only a few of those remain today, as most of the monuments built by Akhenaten were destroyed by successive kings. Kings that ruled after Akhenaten tried to erase his and Nefertiti's legacy from history by ruining and defacing statues and monuments the couple built. Thus, many of their possessions and legacy stayed buried for thousands of years. It seemed like Nefertiti's glory had been buried forever until a German archaeologist made a significant breakthrough in 1912. Ludwig Borchardt uncovered several bust sculptures among the ruins at Amarna, but the one that stood out was Nefertiti's now iconic bust. It was considered the most stunning depiction of a woman from the ancient world, and from its features, one can tell that Nefertiti was indeed as beautiful as her name implied. The bust is now on display in the Berlin Museum, and archaeologists are determined to continue with their search for more artifacts dedicated to the Egyptian queen. Furthermore, the search for Nefertiti's tomb and mummy is still ongoing. Some archaeologists believe that she was buried secretly in a tomb hidden adjacent to Tutankhamun's tomb, but further research has proved this theory to be false. Some archaeologists even believe that Nefertiti was buried outside of Luxor. Given all this uncertainty surrounding her death and burial, it could be a long, long time before Nefertiti's tomb and mummy are finally found. It would be an absolute archaeological delight to finally learn about the death of Queen Nefertiti. What about Nefertiti piqued your curiosity? Let us know in the comments, and as always, we'll see you in the next video.